Alright guys, so today we're going to be learning how to implement the model view presenter design pattern. This is more of a UI design pattern rather than an entire app architecture pattern. However, it can still be very useful. Okay, so let's jump right into this. Let's call this MVP demo and let's get right to it. Okay, so first thing, in a model view presenter, we need a model, a view, and a presenter. So we're going to do just that. All right, we can clean up this a little bit first. Okay, let's make our view, and we are not going to use Swift UI for this. We are going to use UI kit. So we can make a view controller right here. We're going to do this all in code. It's just easier that way. So if you're following along, feel free to pause or whatever, whenever you need to. Alrighty, so this is the view controller we're going to use in our model view presenter. In model view presenter, it's helpful to think of the view controller as the view. The controller actually owns this view. This is the view right here. I'll blow this up so you guys can see it a little bit better. This view is what we really want to work with. Alright, now we need a presenter. Let's just call this presenter. Alrighty. For now, we're going to leave this blank and we're going to create our model. I call this a service class because not only does it deal with the model, I also use it to make network calls. Alright, so how do all three of these files fit in together? So a big concept that we want to focus on and kind of figure out is dependency injection, and another is dependency inversion. So what do I mean by this? What I mean by dependency injection, I mean that we want to instantiate this, like when we initialize this, say we want to say let view controller equals view controller. So right now there's nothing being passed into this initializer. But what if we want to configure it somehow? What if we want to extract some of the logic that we would otherwise need to put inside this view controller into something else? So the view controller in model view presenter is only responsible for showing UI components. The presenter is responsible for the logic behind manipulating those UI events. So let's instantiate our controller with a presenter. And let's get a reference to that right here. Great. So now the presenter needs to somehow know that we're holding on to this view controller. So let's go into the presenter. Okay, we want some function to attach the view. What type is this? Well, we could put in a UI view, but this isn't ideal because then we don't know what we have, like what other UI components are subviews to this UI view, because this is just a generic UI view. What if this controller will conform to a protocol? We could call this protocol view. And we can make it inherit from view right here. So maybe the view has a button, and it's a UI button. It's going to complain if we don't add this UI button. So we can add that right there, UI button. So now, if we make this a view, we will have access to this button. When this was a UI view, we didn't have access to that. All right, because that's a generic one. So let's change this back to view, and we need to capture this reference. So we can say self.view is equal to the view that we pass in, and we want to attach that view from the controller. Great. Perfect. Okay. Now, similar to how we create a protocol for this view, we may also want to create a protocol for this presenter so this class isn't dependent on this specific implementation of presenter. So let's come up here and make a protocol for this. I'll call it presentable. Right, but we still need this attach view method. So we'll need to add that to the protocol. And we'll also make sure that we're guaranteed to have a reference to this view that we pass into the attach view method by adding this member right here. In order to avoid creating a retain cycle when this instance of the controller is deinitialized, we're going to have to detach this reference from the presenter. So let's add a function detach view and make this be a get. Detach view. View equals no. Right. Okay, great. So we have some errors. What's it saying? Cannot invoke. Okay, so it's saying we need to instantiate this with a presenter now. With a presenter. So let's get this presenter here. This is dependency injection right here. It's all it is instantiating one class with some dependency. This presenter is a dependency of this controller. Great. Perfect. Okay. Let's change this to view controller. Okay. So now where does this service come in? So just how the controller was dependent on the presenter, we want the presenter to be dependent on this service. So let's give it an initializer. We want to init with a service of type service. And we'll need to add a private reference to this service right here. And just like, we'll do this right now, just how we added a protocol for this presenter, let's add a protocol for this service so that the presenter isn't dependent on one specific implementation of the service class. This way we can have multiple implementations of this protocol service, even though it's an empty protocol. Well, let's give it a method. Fetch data. Maybe it has a completion block, and it's going to return an array of strings. Now it's going to yell at us if we don't have this function, so let's fetch data. So here, fetching data from network. Now let's just add the completion block, and let's add the strings hello and world. Great. It's giving us one error. Oh, we have to, so it's yelling at us because now it wants a service. Nice. So typically, or what you may be accustomed to doing in a model view controller app is having maybe all the logic and all the network calls inside this view. But now you can see we're inverting the dependencies. So the controller is dependent on the presenter, which in turn is dependent on the service. We're letting the data be the source of truth for our UI. The view controller knows nothing about the presenter other than the implementation, or other than the protocol that this exposes. So great. Now you can see, like in the presenter, if we wanted to, I don't know, configure UI. Maybe this is a method on the presentable protocol. And say we want to call this from our controller. So after we attach, maybe we want to configure a presenter.configure UI. And what we could do, we could call that service method to service.fetchData strings. And here we could set that button, the button's title label .text equal to strings.first or something along the lines. A typical pattern in an application that isn't a demo like this is maybe you have a collection view inside your view, and what you do is fetch data from over the network, grab it, and then reload the data from the presenter for the collection view, and then the data from the network will be populated in the UI. So to wrap up here, dependency inversion and dependency injection are two concepts that allow you to follow like single responsibility principle. It's a nice pattern, so when other people come into the code base, there's something there that some sort of structure that's there that can help guide their coding. So yeah, I really hope this was helpful. The code will be up on GitHub. There is a link in the description below. Don't forget to smash the like button, hit that subscribe button, bell notifications, or dislike, unsub, whatever's your cup of tea. But yeah, hope this was helpful. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.